Scientists don't usually panic. They don't speak in dramatic headlines, and they almost never make bold claims without years of solid evidence. That's how science works. Slow, careful, precise. But lately, something unusual has been happening beneath our feet. There have been no urgent press conferences, no flashing breaking news banners, no alarming announcements on primetime television. Instead, there's been something far more unsettling. Quiet reports, technical papers, low-key updates buried deep inside scientific journals, and behind all of that, an uncomfortable silence. Across different research institutions, monitoring stations, and geological surveys, scientists have started noticing patterns they weren't expecting to see. Not dramatic events, not sudden disasters, just small changes. The kind that are easy to ignore if you're not looking closely. Underground pressure levels shifting in places that have been stable for decades. Ground movement detected where there shouldn't be any. Subtle vertical changes, measured in millimeters, picked up by satellites orbiting hundreds of miles above the Earth. To most people, these numbers mean nothing, but to scientists, they mean everything. Because when the ground moves slowly, quietly, and consistently, it tells a story. A story about forces deep beneath the surface. Forces we cannot see, cannot hear, and cannot feel in our daily lives. What makes this different is not the size of the changes. It's not the speed. It's not even the location. It's the pattern. Data coming in from different regions, collected by different instruments, analyzed by different teams, is beginning to align. The signals don't match what was recorded in the past. They don't follow older models, and they don't behave the way scientists expected them to. These changes aren't loud, they aren't sudden, they don't look dangerous at first glance. But they keep happening. Day after day, month after month. And that consistency is impossible to ignore. Scientists are trained to stay calm, to avoid speculation, to wait for confirmation. Yet behind closed doors, the conversation has shifted from, is this real, to something far more serious. What does this mean? Because when nature repeats the same message over and over again, it's rarely accidental. The Earth doesn't send warnings with sirens. It doesn't announce its intentions. It communicates slowly through pressure, movement, and time. And right now, that message is becoming clearer, not because of one dramatic event, but because of many quiet ones. And consistency, more than anything else, is what worries scientists the most. Across different regions of the United States, monitoring instruments are quietly recording something unusual. Not dramatic spikes, not catastrophic signals, just steady, measurable changes that weren't there before. In some areas, the ground is rising, slowly. Not enough for anyone to notice while walking down the street. Not enough to crack buildings overnight. But enough for satellites, GPS stations, and precision sensors to detect it with certainty. In other locations, pressure is building deep below the surface. Miles underground, forces are shifting in ways that don't match older records. These are not sudden bursts of energy. They are gradual increases, the kind that suggest long-term adjustment rather than immediate release. Scientists are also seeing small movements along parts of the Earth that were considered relatively quiet. Tiny shifts, micro movements, the kind that don't register as earthquakes but still indicate stress within the system. Even more interesting are older fault lines, some thought to be inactive or stable, showing subtle signs of renewed activity. Not breaking, not slipping violently, just responding. On their own, none of this sounds alarming. A millimeter of movement here, a slight pressure change there, a signal just barely outside the historical range. Individually, these signals mean nothing. Together, they tell a story because these measurements are coming from different regions, collected by different technologies, verified by different teams, and yet they are pointing in the same direction. Change, slow, quiet change. This is where it's important to be very clear. This does not mean disaster tomorrow. It does not mean an earthquake is imminent. It does not mean something catastrophic is about to happen. Scientists are not sounding alarms. They are adjusting models. Earth systems don't operate on human timelines. They move over years, decades, sometimes centuries. When something changes underground, it rarely announces itself with a single dramatic event. Instead, it leaves clues, pressure patterns, movement trends, energy redistribution. That's exactly what the data is showing right now. Advanced technology is simply allowing scientists to see what was always invisible before. Satellites can measure ground movement with astonishing precision. Sensors can detect pressure changes miles below the surface. Computers can compare today's data with decades of historical records in seconds. And when they do, one thing becomes clear. The system is not static. It's adjusting. Earth doesn't change suddenly. It doesn't flip a switch overnight. It shifts, responds, balances, and readjusts. First, it warns, not with noise, not with fear, but with data. And right now, that data is quietly telling scientists that something beneath the surface is no longer behaving the way it used to. The Earth has always moved, plates have always shifted, pressure has always built and released. Earthquakes are not new. Volcanoes are not new. Change itself is not new. So why does this moment feel different? Because this time it isn't one place. It isn't one fault line. It isn't one isolated system behaving badly. What scientists are seeing now is change appearing across multiple regions, sometimes thousands of miles apart, yet showing similar characteristics. That alone makes it unusual. In the past, geological events were often localized. A specific fault, a specific volcanic zone, a specific region under stress. Now, the signals are more spread out. And then there's the technology. Decades ago, scientists could only observe the Earth from the surface. Large earthquakes, obvious eruptions, clear, dramatic events. Everything in between was mostly invisible. Today, that's no longer the case. Satellites track ground. Movement down to millimeters. Sensors listen to vibrations too small for humans to feel. Computers compare modern data with decades, even centuries, of records. This level of clarity has never existed before. And with that clarity comes something unexpected. Patterns appearing where they shouldn't. Movements in areas considered stable. Pressure changes that don't follow historical behavior. Trends that don't align with older predictive models. Even more concerning is the speed. Not fast in human terms, but fast compared to geological averages. Changes that once took much longer are now being detected over shorter time spans. Still slow, still controlled, but noticeably different. Scientists aren't standing in front of cameras saying, this will cause a disaster. They're saying something far more serious, whereas I don't fully understand what's happening yet. That sentence carries weight because scientists are trained to explain, to model, to predict. When they openly admit uncertainty, it doesn't mean panic. It means honesty. It means the data has moved beyond familiar explanations. It means we're entering territory that hasn't been fully mapped. And history shows that unfamiliar territory is where the biggest discoveries, biggest risks often exist. This doesn't mean the worst is coming. It doesn't mean something is about to break. It means the old assumptions may no longer apply. The Earth isn't behaving dangerously, it's behaving differently. And when experts pause, reflect, and choose their words carefully, it's not because they're hiding something, it's because they're listening to a planet that's quietly doing something it hasn't done in quite the same way before. And when experts say they don't fully understand what's happening yet, won't boy you can't, it means we're standing at the edge of something new. This isn't about panic. This isn't about fear. It's about paying attention. The data doesn't suggest an immediate crisis. It doesn't point to sudden collapse or instant catastrophe. What it points to is something far more familiar in Earth's history. Adjustment. Slow, methodical, and often invisible to the people living through it. One likely outcome is increased monitoring. Scientists will watch these changes more closely, refine their models, and expand early warning systems. Not because disaster is guaranteed, but because understanding comes before preparation. Over time, there may be stress on infrastructure. Roads, pipelines, and older buildings weren't designed with long-term geological shifts in mind. These changes don't happen overnight, they reveal themselves gradually, giving societies time to respond if they choose to. There will also be more research, more questions, better answers. Each new data point helps clarify what's happening beneath the surface and why. Most importantly, these are slow changes, not sudden collapse. The Earth moves on timescales much longer than headlines. It adjusts constantly. Humans just don't like being reminded that the ground beneath us isn't as permanent as it feels. You don't need to be afraid, but you do need to stay informed. Because history shows one thing clearly: the biggest changes on Earth always begin quietly. If you want calm, factual updates about changes shaping our future, subscribe and stay aware, not afraid.